My name is Jasmine Price, and I am a school teacher of 46 years in Georgia. What I am about to share with you is the testimony of my near-death experience, recounting what happened when Jesus showed me the shocking truth about the true origins of Black people. I literally saw and experienced something that completely transformed my understanding of Black people, their history, and their connection to the divine. But before we begin, please tell me where you are listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we are physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought of this near-death experience testimony. Let's have an open and honest discussion so that we may all learn from one another on this channel. Enjoy listening. It happened on the 4th of August, 2020. I had been battling health issues for months, tired, exhausted, and in pain that could not be traced to any one cause. My doctors were perplexed, but it was not until that evening that everything reached its peak. I remember sitting in the living room chatting with my husband about the children and their homework, when suddenly everything went black. It is difficult to describe what happened next. In one moment I was in my home, and the very next moment I was not. I was no longer in my body. I felt light, as if I were weightless. I found myself in a vast, illuminated space. It was as if the very air were made of light, radiant and warm. And there, before me, stood Jesus. He was dressed in dazzling white robes, and his eyes penetrated straight into my soul. I felt love, comfort, and compassion all at once. It was as if every fear I had ever known had evaporated. I knew at that very moment that I was in the presence of one who held all the answers. At first, Jesus did not speak. Then he spoke softly, with tenderness. "Welcome, Jasmine. You are here for a reason." As I stood before him, 1,000 questions rushed through my mind. But before I could speak, Jesus began to reveal things to me that, in the moments that followed, would completely change the way I viewed the world around me. One of the first things he revealed was the curse of Ham. I had already heard this story. Who had not? Growing up in the church, I was taught that Black people were cursed because of Ham, the son of Noah. It was a concept that seemed logical to many, one that was often used to justify racial injustice, slavery, and discrimination. But Jesus told me that all of that was false. "Jasmine, the curse of Ham has been misunderstood for centuries," he said. "The curse was never meant for Black people." I was astonished, my mind striving to follow his words. He explained that the curse was not upon Ham, but upon Canaan, the son of Ham. The Bible, in Genesis 9:18-29, recounted that Noah became drunk and exposed himself before his sons. When Ham saw his father in that state and did not cover him, Noah imposed a curse, not on Ham, but on Canaan, the son of Ham. Then I saw how the curse upon Canaan symbolized the prophetic message concerning the future descendants of Canaan and the conflicts that would arise. This completely transformed my understanding, and I felt an overwhelming clarity as Jesus spoke. The curse was specifically directed at Canaan, and not at the entire line of Ham. It was not Black people who were cursed, it was Canaan and his descendants. But somehow, throughout history, the truth had been distorted, and people had used this misinterpretation to justify their own prejudices and harmful ideologies. Jesus explained to me that the curse was about disobedience, spiritual failure, and not a racial issue. It was a matter of sin, not skin color. Jesus showed me that, over time, this distortion had become deeply rooted in society, leading to centuries of abuse and discrimination. People had misunderstood the message, and that misunderstanding had caused untold suffering to generations of people. As we walked together through that glorious space, Jesus revealed to me the truth about the origins of Black people. I had always believed, like many others, that Black people were somehow inferior or had been cursed in one way or another. But Jesus revealed the divine blessing hidden behind the African heritage. "Jasmine," he said, You have believed many falsehoods about the African people, but I will show you the truth. Black people, the descendants of Ham, have been misunderstood, and their true history has been distorted for centuries. It was never about a curse, but about a divine plan and blessing. He showed me the importance of the descendants of Ham, especially Cush, Mizraim, and Put. Cush, he explained, was the father of the ancient African peoples, the ones who gave birth to the great kingdom of Cush, which existed alongside Egypt as one of the great civilizations of antiquity. Jesus smiled. Their history is not one of disgrace, but of honor and strength. What struck me the most was when Jesus explained that the name Cush itself meant black in the biblical sense. The term black, he said, has never been a mark of shame. In the ancient world, it symbolized beauty, power, and the strength of a people. He paused to let the weight of his words sink in. Blackness was not a curse, but a blessed and sacred identity, even though it has been distorted over time. Through Jesus, I understood that the descendants of Cush were an essential part of the plan that God had for humanity. These people, he said, were blessed by God with wisdom, leadership, and divine favor. The African nations of Ethiopia, Cush, Nubia, and Egypt were not cursed. They were divinely inspired and chosen for a higher purpose in the ancient world. One of the deepest revelations that Jesus gave me was about ancient Egypt. I had always been drawn to the history and mysteries of Egypt. The pyramids, the gods and goddesses, and the incredible achievements of the ancient Egyptians had fascinated me since childhood. But I had never understood the deeper divine connection that Egypt had with the story of creation and the ancient peoples of God. Jasmine, Egypt was never meant to be seen only as a place of bondage, Jesus said. It is the cradle of civilization, a place where wisdom and knowledge are shared with the world. Jesus explained that Mizraim, one of Ham's sons, was the father of the Egyptians. The Egyptians, he continued, were part of the same blessed line as Cush. They were a chosen people entrusted with great knowledge and wisdom, a knowledge that was later passed down to other cultures around the world. Egypt was not only a place of enslavement, he said, it was a place of divine wisdom, a source of knowledge meant to be shared. The teachings of the pharaohs, those great spiritual leaders, were part of my plan to shape the world. Jesus looked at me with compassion. I understand the pain you have endured in witnessing Egypt's role in the enslavement of the Israelites. But the Egyptians, despite their fall into idolatry, were once divinely chosen to spread wisdom and light to all nations. Standing with Jesus, absorbing everything he was showing me, I felt something profound change within my soul. I had spent my life feeling disconnected and uncertain of my place in the world. But Jesus was showing me a new truth, a truth of divine heritage that reached back to the beginning of time. Then, he revealed how the misinterpretations of the Bible, the distortion of truths regarding race and identity, had led to centuries of pain, discrimination, and suffering. But the time for healing has come, he said. The time for truth is now. The curse of Ham was never a curse. It was a spiritual misunderstanding, a misunderstanding that has been used to oppress, distort, and conceal the beauty of Black people's heritage. As Jesus continued to guide me through that luminous space, the deep peace and clarity I felt were unlike anything I had experienced in my earthly life. The truth was like a balm, soothing the wounds of my past. He had already shown me the truth about the curse of Ham, how it had been misinterpreted to justify centuries of hatred and oppression. Yet there remained so much to uncover, and Jesus, as patient as ever, began to take me deeper into the mysteries of the divine origin of Black people. Jasmine, there is even more to this story, he said. I want you to see the legacy of strength, wisdom, and love that has been passed down from generation to generation to my people. At that moment, he revealed a great tapestry of civilizations, Ethiopia, Nubia, Cush, Egypt, and others, all born from the descendants of Cush. These nations, explained Jesus, played a central role in God's plan for humanity. They were instrumental in shaping the world long before the onset of confusion and division. I was shown the ancient kingdom of Cush, which flourished along the Nile. The people of Cush were not only mighty in battle, but also wise in spiritual matters. They were the guardians of sacred knowledge, Jesus declared. Their wisdom concerning creation and the divine laws of the universe was a gift from God, meant to enlighten the hearts of all nations. I saw artifacts, ancient temples, and writings that attested to a deep and intimate connection with God, a connection that many people today remain completely unaware of. I felt a wave of emotion as I saw the great Nubian queens, such as Queen Amanirenas and Queen Makeda, who led their people with grace, courage, and strength. These women were not merely political leaders, Jesus explained, but also spiritual leaders. They understood the divine calling upon their lives to guide their people with wisdom and love. They were dear to my heart. The kingdom of Egypt, too, stood as a testament to God's divine blessing. Jesus showed me that the Egyptians, despite their later fall into idolatry, had once been at the forefront. Intellectual discovery. Egypt was a cradle of wisdom, he explained. It was never meant to be a place of bondage, but a place where divine knowledge could flourish. I was shown how Moses, the great prophet, was raised in the palace of the Pharaoh, not by accident, but by divine purpose. Moses was placed in Egypt, said Jesus, to draw from the great wisdom of the Egyptians. He was called to lead my people, but Egypt, in its early days, was meant to be a source of light, a beacon of wisdom from which many nations would be blessed. What the world calls idolatry in Egypt was once part of their spiritual path, Jesus explained. They sought to understand the divine, though they sometimes lost their way. Still, the foundations of their wisdom were deeply rooted in the truth. I began to understand how the descendants of Africa spread throughout the world. The African diaspora, which includes the forced movement of millions of Africans through slavery, was not a random occurrence. It was part of God's larger plan. I saw how African ancestors carried with them their knowledge, faith, and resilience across the globe, even in the face of immense suffering. Jesus showed me that slavery, one of the darkest chapters in human history, was not something that God ordained, but rather the result of human sin and greed. Yet even amid that pain, the African people had carried a divine spark, a deep sense of hope, faith, and strength that could never be extinguished. That divine strength had survived through generations of suffering, and it was this strength that made the Black community so resilient. Jasmine, the African people are not merely survivors, Jesus said. They are my warriors, my children, bearers of a divine heritage passed down through millennia. He spoke these words with such conviction that I felt them deeply in my soul. As I meditated on his words, I saw visions of Black spiritual leaders, from abolitionists to civil rights figures such as Martin Luther King Jr., who had been inspired by that divine spark. These individuals were not only fighting for freedom, but for justice in alignment with divine will. I saw how God had always been with the African people, even in their darkest hours, raising prophets, leaders, and activists to proclaim his truth and guide his people toward a brighter future. Then Jesus led me to the understanding of African spirituality. I had always been curious about the spiritual practices of my ancestors, the rituals, the respect for ancestors, the connection with the earth and nature. Jesus explained to me that these practices, when kept pure, were not opposed to God, but were expressions of the profound spiritual connection that the African people have with the divine. Jasmine, your ancestors knew they were connected to the earth, to the stars, to all of creation, he said. They understood that the divine is present in all things, and that all things can be used to honor God. Jesus showed me how the honoring of ancestors in many African cultures does not mean worshiping the dead, but recognizing the wisdom and sacrifices of those who came before us. Honoring your ancestors, he explained, is not about idolizing them, but acknowledging their place in the divine story. It is about remaining connected to the wisdom and love that flows from generation to generation. I saw images of ancient African rituals where people danced, sang, and communed with God through the elements: fire, water, air, and earth. These rituals were rooted in the understanding that God's presence is not confined to a building or a book, but permeates all of creation. "I am present in all things," said Jesus. "My presence flows through the earth, the wind, the water, and the fire." The rituals you see were expressions of the deep connection between the Creator and His creation. It was then that I understood that spirituality is not confined to one culture or religion, but is a universal experience, one that can manifest in many forms, yet always with the same divine origin. As my journey with Jesus continued, He began to explain to me the struggles and trials that the African people and African Americans have endured throughout history. I saw that the fight for freedom, equality, and justice was not merely a matter of human endeavor, but was intimately connected to a divine purpose, a purpose that had been prophesied and predestined by God. "Jasmine," Jesus said, "the struggle of the Black community is not just a fight for human rights. It is a spiritual battle. It is a battle for the restoration of divine truth and justice on earth. Their fight is for the dignity, the honor, and the rightful place that has always belonged to them in my kingdom. They are my beloved, and I have heard their cries." This revelation was powerful. It meant that the pain, suffering, and oppression experienced by Black people were not in vain. They were part of a larger cosmic struggle for truth and justice. The fight of the African American community for equality was not simply a political or social movement. It was a spiritual calling. God had seen the injustices and was using this community to bring change to the world. I was shown that the strength of the Black community, from the resilience of African slaves to the civil rights movements, was a manifestation of God's divine purpose. These struggles, though painful, were part of God's plan to restore truth, love, and unity on earth. I began to understand the role of the African people in God's divine plan of salvation. Jesus explained that the hardships faced by Black people were a testimony to the world, a testimony that the divine spark within them had never been extinguished, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. "Jasmine, the return of my people, my children, will come in a time of great awakening. The truth about their identity and purpose will be revealed to the world, and with it will come an era of restoration and unity." I was given a vision of the return of Jesus, in which He would come back to bring justice, peace, and reconciliation to all people, especially to the Black community. The truth about their divine origins would no longer be hidden. The world would finally see the blessing that for so long had been misinterpreted. As I began to return to my earthly body, I felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. The divine heritage of Black people was not something to be ashamed of or concealed. It was a sacred gift, a gift passed down from generation to generation, and one that would continue to shine like a beacon of hope, strength, and divine purpose. When I finally awoke in the hospital, I had changed. The doctors told me that I had been clinically dead for more than 12 minutes, but I knew that I had experienced something that could not be explained by science alone. I had seen the divine plan unfold before me, and above all, I had been shown the love and mercy of Jesus, who revealed to me the true and sacred role of Black people in the history of God's kingdom. If you are watching this, I want you to know that what I experienced was not only for me, but for all of us. The truth that was revealed to me is that Black people are not cursed. They are divinely chosen, with a rich heritage of strength, wisdom, and purpose. Our struggles are part of a larger spiritual battle, but in the end, healing and restoration will come. If you are Black, know that you are part of something greater. You are loved, chosen, and powerful. And if you come from another background, the message of unity and healing is for you as well. Together we can heal the world through understanding and love.